All right. Okay. The art and science of coaching is back for another episode. I'm your host, Coach Tim Hall, and I have with me, as always, Coach Zach Gregg. Zach, how are you doing up in Roanoke today?
Oh, I'm doing great. I have not started packing though, and I'm supposed to be heading down to North Carolina tomorrow. So, always leaving things till the last minute while telling other people they've got to be better at planning, right? Do as I say.
We are also professional procrastinators. We've become
Absolutely
the best. Yes. So, well, I hope your that new Subaru of yours is ready for an adventure in the snow, because we are getting pounded right now. So far at my house, we have about 5 inches. They say we're going to get up to 10. I'm pretty excited about it. I've been out in it this morning. So yeah, you have that to look forward to in your trip back.
Oh yeah.
All right. So a few little housekeeping things to cover. Want to, remind everybody that we are recording these episodes of the Art and Science of Coaching between Zach and I and guests that we have had. We're recording those on video on Zoom and sharing them to our YouTube channel. And we'll put that in the show notes, the link to that show for you to click on and watch. We just ask that, hey, subscribe and leave some comments on any of the shows that you watch and listen to. We want to hear what you have to say, any questions you might have. So check out the Art and Science of Coaching on YouTube. And then, of course, we are on all the major podcast apps, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, you name it, we are on it. Leave a review, like the show, give us a thumbs up, a rating. It was kind of cool the other day to read a review on Apple podcast platform of our new Art and Science of Coaching, and just how much a listener appreciated that. So yeah, we could use your help in getting the word out and the message out and spreading the good news of what we are talking about. So YouTube and podcast apps are a big help in us getting that word out and the message out, and just hope that you would support us through those things. And we appreciate everyone who has been listening. I don't know about you, but the feedback I've been getting, Zach's been pretty good. People are enjoying the conversations we're having.
Definitely. Yeah. It's been surprising and encouraging to hear people I never thought would be listening are listening. And all my physiology friends are sending me messages telling me how I said things a little bit wrong or this or that. So it's always good to get feedback, right?
Yes, we do want to be corrected on our mistakes.
Yeah.
Coaches, that's one of the things that we know we must be good at, is providing that constructive criticism. And I've said this to you before, as you continue on in this profession and you continue to rise the ranks, so to speak, that circle of influence that you have as a leader gets smaller and smaller. And you have fewer and fewer people who are there to hold you accountable and say, hey, that one thing you said or that thing you did, yeah, hey, I'd love that. I don't get offended myself. It's like, oh man, thank you for pointing that out. And so, yeah, bring it on. And
Yeah.
or the questions and comments. That is what's driving our conversations in these shows, because we are truly making this up as we go along with our topics and the and the guests. Today we have no guest. All right,
No
it's just
guess.
you and I, and we have two things we are going to talk about today. Just two things, and we're going to dive in as deeply as we can to those two things. And the first thing we're going to talk about is something that we cover with all athletes, the kids at school, our junior racers, our masters racers, our veterans that we're working with. And it's a topic all of us can relate to, and that is what to do when I'm sick or ill. And we have another episode we'll do about injuries. That's a separate thing by itself. We're going to talk about just what to do, what not to do when we are ill. We're sick or ill, not feeling well. How do we approach training, and what should we do or not do during that time? And then when we have explored that topic, we're going to have a little bit of fun, because we're going to talk about our first bike races.
Oh yeah.
That we did, and what made it fun, and what stood out to us, and what has us continue to come back to it, to continue to do it and have fun with it, and now how that even translated into kicking it up a notch and becoming coaches. So we're gonna, yeah, those are the two themes today. That's what we're going to talk about. So stick with us and stick around for those stories that we're going to tell, because Zach's got some good ones. I do too with my first bike race. I will never, ever forget it. And I'm glad it happened the way it did, because that's led me to today. So, all right, Zach, we get the question. We got one just the other day about this very topic. Let's dive in head first with what are the different illness, sickness scenarios that we encounter as coaches, and what advice are we giving to everyone?
Right. So we're just going to assume that our listeners are locked in to how they're feeling on a daily basis. I think that's the number one thing, right? Is when you wake up, your feet hit the floor, it's got to be a question every day of, how do I feel? What's going good? What's going bad? Am I tight? Am I supposed to feel this way? Is my head killing me? What's up? So let's just assume that they've been doing these checks and now they realize something's off. And so when you realize something's off, you got to kind of decide, where is it stemming from and what's going on. So the old school rule, once you've said, I kind of feel crummy, is if it's in your head, you can go about your day, you can keep on training. And if it's below your neck, then you have to assess and see if you need to take a day off, take a day easy, something like that. And basically that rule comes from the fact that a stuffy nose, a headache, a sore throat could be allergy related. It could be some minor inconvenient issue. Whereas everything below your neck typically has a more serious connotation to it. So we're talking about a difference between the common cold, a sore throat related to dust and allergens in the air, something like that, versus if it's below your neck, you might have a fever, you might have gastrointestinal issues, there might be some chest congestion that you have to worry about. And in those situations, you can compromise your body's ability to fight those infections by going and pushing yourself hard in your training. So basically, the rule of thumb is, if something feels off, take your temperature. And if you got a fever, don't go train. If you have a bad cough, something like that, don't go train. Because obviously we want to give our body the ability to fight off whatever it is going on. And if we make it worse by training, we take 5 or 6 days off as a result, instead of just taking that one day off, letting our body manage something and then just moving on. Is that kind of the same thing that you've been hearing or that you practice?
Yes. And you have heard me ask this question many times of athletes when things are good, or even if they're health isn't up to par. Tell me how you think and feel on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 being the best. Where are you at? What's your energy level? Scale of 1 to 10. Is it 8, 9, 10? Is it 5? Why is it 5? What is the context? And I use that as it's a simple way for people to just share their feedback, and the answers will surprise you. You don't get too many 10s. You don't get too many 9s or 10s ever. You're fortunate to get 8s, and that's on a day-to-day basis. But you start getting into these head colds and chest colds. Chest colds in particular seem to really, knock people down a good bit. You brought up allergies. That's something we deal with an awful lot in the South, especially, is allergies. And I'm not sure about across the U.S. just how frequent and how common that is. But here in the South, dealing with allergies in early spring, and now it seems all throughout the year, allergies can play a big role. But yes, separating those two things and encouraging people to take that one day or maybe two to save you a week on the other side of things, I think is very important. So I think those are two way. That's a good way to segment the two things. They're not equal, are they?
No, and I think, keying on that question, how do you feel, and being able to put it into terms of a number is very important, right? Because as a coach, it's probably the thing that you ask and you type and you see more often than any other question, right? It's just, or that you ask other people, is how do you feel, right? And what we're trying to do as coaches is educate people so that they can actually tell us enough correct information to help us inform the decisions that we're about to make, right? So if they say, hey, something off, it's like, well, what is it? How is it making you feel? You need that information and that level of self-awareness from your athlete so that you can tell them the correct thing to do. So it's not, anytime I just get a good, or, hey, how you feeling? All right. That's cool in passing conversation. That's like, if you recognize somebody, you're like, hey, how you doing? That's totally different than how you feeling, because that really informs whether you should go train on that day, whether what you've been doing, an accumulation of life stress, this illness that you've developed of your training, whether it's weighing you down too much and you need to take a break, or whether it's this is normal for this time of the cycle, we expect to happen, you can push through it. So it's how do you feel is incredibly important.
And by us asking these questions and going through these scenarios with the athletes, our goal as a coach is to educate you so that you can make that executive level decision, so to speak, in the moment. If you wake up one day, you're not always having to rely on a coach to say, oh, my coach said this or not this, or do that. But that you educate yourself on these different scenarios on what's the best practice, because there's moments when you need to make that decision and it'd be the right one. The worst thing that a coach wants to experience is to not be told anything, and an athlete to not share that they've been ill, or they've got a cold and they took a week off. Maybe they needed to take that week off, but that we're unaware of that, or an athlete tried to push through without conveying that they haven't been up to par, when we could have provided some counsel for them to do the right thing, because we don't want to compromise, future training workouts that we're going to do. We want to keep them in the best shape that we can and get them through whatever they might be going through. So communication is key anytime you're feeling an illness. And then as you educate yourself and you know what to do in these given situations, then you can make that executive decision. But all the while, really encourage the listeners, if you're working with a coach, communicate. If you don't know, ask. But once you know, make that executive decision and then communicate it. And then that way, if any changes need to take place with the plan moving forward, then those editing side of things from the plan perspective can be done, rather than finding out a week later and go, oh wow, well that's different than just making an adjustment on the day or 2 days. So yeah, I think communication is key, and not trying to fight through it on your own, thinking it's going to get better, because it usually doesn't just turn around and get better. Um, hasn't been my experience. So communication,
No. Yeah.
very
Pushing through is the worst thing that you could do in a lot of situations. You know, if it's slightly uncomfortable, sure, try it. Keep asking yourself, how do I feel? But if it's something that's really going on, if there's legit congestion, if you have a fever, if there's some gastrointestinal distress, then you're just delaying your own recovery by trying to be tough and going out and completing your workout.
And I think the other key things for us to mention when we're talking about what to do when we're ill is, yeah, fever, nauseousness, headaches, but especially fever, vomiting, and diarrhea.
Yep.
I mean, those are the big three. If you're experiencing a fever, or you've been vomiting, or you have diarrhea, like, you have to stay off the bike. I don't, in my view, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You should not ride your bike when you're experiencing one of those three, if not all, all of them at the same time.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, then it totally switches from a training mentality to a recovery mentality, where now you're focused on hydration and fueling for totally different reasons, right? When we're in these distressed states, we have to remember the same things that make us perform well on the bike make us recover more quickly when we're on the couch waiting for this thing to pass. So, making sure that you have your electrolyte drink with you, making sure that you're not just drinking tons of water to stay hydrated, because it's going to pull those necessary minerals out of your blood or into your blood to help dilute all that water that you're drinking. So getting your favorite hydration mix, ours is Scratch, um, into a bottle and sipping on that throughout the day, making sure that you're getting extra sleep. Again, same thing that helps you on the bike. Extra sleep, putting your feet up, making sure that you're having enough calories, enough nutrient dense food in your diet to help support that recovery process is going to get you back on the bike quicker. Um, and typically my rule, I don't know about you, is you have to feel good for an entire day before we get back to rolling, if it's something that really takes you off the bike. Um, because you can't just assume that because you're feeling better, you're over it. So making sure that you're really locked into being patient and allowing your body to fully get over whatever you're experiencing before you hop into this training, which is a stressful thing for your body. That's how we get better. You stress, you adapt from it. So making sure that you're totally clear of whatever this ailment is before you get back on the bike is very important too.
Yeah, everyone has a sense of urgency, don't they, to start pedaling or working out or whatever it might be, and that urgency can backfire sometimes.
It's yeah, it's both a blessing and a curse to want to ride, right? Like,
Well,
you wanna get back out there.
the one thing I love to point out during this is, we're for any athlete when they're sick and or injured, is your body is working much harder than you realize. You're burning more calories. It is fighting off an infection. It's fighting off whatever. And those things that are happening to you, it's a good thing, actually. It's your body, trying to overcome something to heal again. So these are actually good signs that whatever is happening to you is happening to you. It should be, um, it, you know, in some cases, a warning sign for maybe behaviors that caused these things to happen to you. Sometimes through no fault of your own, maybe you just contracted something. Other times, because of what you did to yourself through whatever stress in life, training or work or something else. Maybe you overtrained or you did too much or whatever the case may be. These things occurred, and it's your body telling you, hey, it's like a yield sign to, we've got to fix ourselves, we got to repair. And that while that's happening, it requires a lot more effort for your body to do that, a lot more energy, and that you still have to eat. And just because you're sitting around, it doesn't mean that you don't have energy demands that are equal to, or maybe even greater than when you are actually training.
Yeah, a low grade fever is one of the best indicators that something is happening in your body, because that heat is being generated for a purpose. So paying attention to that, I mean, everybody, hopefully, after what we've experienced this year, um, thinking that, an elevated temperature was a sign of the coronavirus, has a thermometer available to them, because if something feels off and you're having a low grade fever, it means that something really is off, that your body's reacting to something. It's generating that heat for a purpose. It's either trying to get something off by raising your core temperature to a point where that virus is uncomfortable, or there's just something else going on, right? So paying attention to your normal body temperature, because that varies between person to person. And then, if something feels off, if it's 2 or 3 degrees higher, then that's a good indicator. And don't try and take something to get rid of a fever unless it's really, really high, right? So if you're 2 or 3 degrees above normal, totally fine. It just means you got to chill out and wait for things to pass, wait for that fever to break, because it's a sign of your body doing something to fight something off.
Yeah, the past, 9 months, I'm sure everyone has overreacted to anything that's
Oh, yeah.
occurred within their body, thinking, oh, the worst, and what if, and maybe it's that. Um, and we've made it this far, and most people, I think, are learning. Uh, we were having these sensations all along. Even before we went through this pandemic, you get little aches and pains, and occasionally you do run into a legitimate illness, and you have to overcome it. And as a coach, uh, one of the best messages I get from time to time in these scenarios is when an athlete will say, hey, I woke up not feeling well today, I'm going to take the day off. Or maybe they got into the middle of a ride and they just weren't able to perform, and they said, I stopped, and I turned
Mhm.
around and I went home. I'm like, bravo, good decision.
Yep.
And that's the best message. The one we don't like to get is, I haven't been feeling well, and I just went out there and just tried to push through, and you just, where that goes,
Right.
what it leads to, and it's not a good place. And so, you athletes out there, it's okay to miss a day. You're going to gain more from missing a day, if 2 or 3, whatever it takes to get healthy. And I agree with you what you said earlier about, there's also, and everyone's different, there's this threshold that you need to hit before you really resume training. Uh, and maybe it's starting back with some active recovery rides first, and not thinking, oh, I got to make up that volume, and immediately go into 3 hour rides, or something more difficult, which, again, you might feel better, but your body hasn't fully recuperated and have the energy stores ready for a challenging day. And you got to be very thoughtful about what it is you do. And that's where having a coach with some objectivity can play an important role.
Mhm. Yeah, and there is a big distinction between illness causing you to either miss or quit a workout and fatigue, right? So this is just like a little personal anecdote. But if you're just really tired and you want to go home because the workout is harder, in that situation, you should just dock the power down a little bit and get it done. But we're talking about, you've identified that you are not feeling well. And in that situation, yeah, bending that workout, going home, focusing on recovery is so much more beneficial.
And we should add, there is a point at which all of us should, let's say things worsen,
Hmm.
you really do need to consider seeing a physician, a doctor, and depending upon the severity of the situation, hey, tell a loved one that you're not feeling well. Make sure you tell someone what you're going through, so they're aware and also can keep an eye on you and check in on you. And uh, we're our own worst enemy sometimes because we won't seek out professional help for whatever ails us. But really encourage people to just be very careful about what that line is for you and to seek that help out when you absolutely need to. And it's okay. I mean, that's what hospitals are for. That's what doctors are for, is to help you get better and to not try and fight it out by yourself, because boy, you might find that you get so worse off that you don't even have the energy to turn the ignition in your car to take yourself to the
Yeah,
doctor.
you never want to get to that point.
No, not at all. And we're fortunate with what you and I do as college coaches. We lean on our athletic training staff quite a bit because they are an objective source, a professional that is skilled in these areas. They deal primarily with injuries, but they also help us with illnesses um, and keeping a close eye on athletes. And I think that's something for all athletes to have. That's someone as important, having a physician, a family physician, having someone that you turn to help you feel as best you possibly can. I think, that's something. We don't just make these decisions and not have outside professional counsel helping us make these decisions. It's through our experiences with these professionals of the different types, be it athletic training or actual medicine, that's helped sort of shape and guide our thought process with this. And so, yeah, there's lots of considerations, and it's not just, oh, take the day off and leave it at that. And we do ask deeper questions, and that's where communication, is key. So, yeah, we're talking about head colds, we're talking about nauseousness, we're talking about chest colds, which I think is one of the more prevalent ones that we run into. If you dig down, I mean, even before all this, the pandemic happened, I mean, nowadays people are struggling with some type of asthmatic condition.
Mm-hmm.
You have, legitimate asthma, and then there's exercise-induced asthma, and or just general inflammation in the chest that people deal with. It seems to be a pretty common thing, and I see that as something that's really held a lot of people back. Now, I don't know all the causes to it myself. You can speculate if it hasn't been diagnosed, but I see that as something that a lot of cyclists deal with.
Yeah, definitely. And it's something that I think is probably pretty difficult to treat because the amount of things that cause lung inflammation and irritation, right? So, personal experiences. I've had when I was in Colorado for my year of school there, I had some enterovirus strain that was caused by fires in California, and it was released into the air. Um, and I was on, heavy steroids and an inhaler for 6 months, and I had to monitor my with a pulse ox my oxygen saturation on a daily basis. And that was no fault of my own. I was just outside at the wrong time of day. And in North Carolina, the mold and the mildew can cause a lot of irritation. We are on an old campus. I've been on other old campuses, living in the dorm rooms. It's not the best from like a lung hygiene standpoint. So you really have to stay on top of that aspect of how you feel, because if you let these things linger, they turn into a problem that you need antibiotics or steroids or something where you are significantly impacted by this in order for it to resolve itself.
Yeah. Well, air quality, boy, that is a topic that's even more prevalent today than before. We would talk about air quality from an environmental standpoint, just being outside. Now it's down to air quality inside your own home and businesses, and how that relates to overall health. And as years continue on, I think that's going to be a hot button topic, is air quality in all our environments, indoor and outdoor. But yeah, so I think we've broken it down. Hey, head cold, what? Get on the bike.
Keep rolling.
Yeah. Chest cold,
Stop.
yeah. Just don't do it until it sort of breaks up and gets through.
Yeah.
And
And
then
a note for our coach friends that are listening to this. Don't be a medical doctor. Don't tell them that they need more zinc or vitamin C or anything. Let them go see a professional in the same way that you are the best resource for them with bikes and things related to their athletic endeavors. Let a doctor be a doctor. Encourage them to get a teledoc appointment, whatever it is, right? We don't need to be the expert in every area, right? So let's let the experts be the person that these people turn to. And in turn, you train these people to seek out experts in the field that they want to improve in, right? And if that field is their health related to a cold, then they do that. If it's they have an injury, they seek out a physical therapist. You don't have to be everything to everybody. And we get in this mode where we have to have the answer to everything. And I think this is one of those places where we just have to push this off onto the actual expert, right? Because you don't want to be advising them something that's incorrect that could permanently impact their health.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's a great point. It's why we've had the guests on the show that we've had, and the future guests that we're going to have. You know, we talked with Heath Dotson about aerodynamics. We're going to talk with someone else about bike fits. We have another guest lined up specifically about nutrition, and we will get into vitamins and minerals with her.
Yep.
And I agree with you. You know, I don't ask my plumber to look at my, electrical problem, and vice versa. You know, it's go to that specialist who is an expert in that field. And yeah, man, I it's hard enough and difficult enough just to prescribe the proper workouts for the right person, and to get into such a serious matter. You know, we coaches should not be doing that. But I think these general responses to the common things, I think, is good sound advice, and what you're going to hear from other coaches. You know, I'd be wary of any coach who's telling you to push through if you have serious inflammation of the chest, or if you've got a fever, or any of these things. Like, no, that's a red flag. That just should not happen. And it's just goes against common sense. You know, use common sense. You know, you've heard it said, I mean, common sense is an uncommon thing these days, but boy, I'll tell you what, it can take you a long ways if you just listen to your intuition and go with it, and just believe that, hey, it's going to be okay. You know, don't panic. It's not the end of the world. Yeah, if you have a prolonged illness, yeah, you're going to lose some strength and fitness, but guess what? What's more important at that point anyway? Your health or your fitness? I mean, you can't have one without the other. So your health is by far more important. You've had your own health struggles, necessarily more like physical things that you've been through.
Sure.
I've had a couple that are health, and I've had a couple that are physical. And boy, when you're going through those experiences, I mean, I don't recall being frustrated about, wow, I couldn't go do that thing that I love to do. It's like, holy crap, I just want to feel normal.
Right.
You know, that becomes the theme of the day. It's like, I just want to feel like a normal human being. And if I get to go do that thing I love to do, great, but I'll wait it out.
Totally.
Yeah.
Agreed.
All right. I think that covers it on the illnesses and fevers and whatnot. Okay, people. So, yeah, don't be dumb. All right. Yeah. Do the right thing. All right. So on to something fun. All right. I've actually done some episodes with friends. Did it over the summer where we would do a show about their first bike race. And this is not something you and I have talked about. And it got me to thinking, and I'd love to hear the story. So we're going to talk about our first bike races and like what that story was, and the excitement, and what made it fun, and like, why do we keep doing it? And now we're coaches. So Zach, what was your first bike race?
All right. Well, I got to take you listeners all the way back to 2016 for this one.
Hey, man. Yeah, that's way
What a
back.
journey we're going on. Um, yeah, so to give everybody a little bit of context, I played lacrosse in college up until I was 22 years old. Had some ankle reconstruction, found the bike as a commuting tool while I was in college because mobility was very limited on that ankle. Um, and then used the bike as a rehab tool. And in total try-hard fashion, tried to set a new FTP and get a power meter and all these things before I was even able to ride a bike outside. Um, and so I had an expected lack of handling skills and awareness and all these things. Total Fred, right? Um,
This was on
so
this
this
was on the mountain bike initially, correct?
so it started out as mountain biking. Yeah. So when I was in Colorado, we would do a little bit of mountain biking. I had some friends who were on the cycling team who were uh nationally ranked downhillers. And so I was just like a total amusement to them, right? Because at this time I was a big strong lacrosse player, um and didn't have any idea of what I was doing, no fear. And
You
so
brought you brought the comedy for them every single day then.
oh, it was fantastic. Yeah, from the things I would wear to just the approach I would have to these things, like they loved it. And I was a good crasher because I was thick, right? So it didn't matter what we were doing, I could handle it. So yeah, transitioning from that, I knew that I wanted to race in some capacity, along with the other things I was doing professionally. So um, I got a coach, and he taught me all the things about the FTP and all this stuff. And I had done a couple local mountain bike races, but I think so it's called the Mill Mountain Disco Series. Um, and
Was
there,
that in
it's basically
Colorado?
no. So
Oh,
sorry, this is I'd gone through rehab in Virginia,
okay.
and I was just like freshly let out the door, and I decided I was going to race the Mill Mountain Disco race. Um, and so it was a mountain bike uphill time trial. And basically I got dropped immediately. But I think the funnier and more wild story is the first road race. So that's what I
Ah,
think I'm going to take
okay.
everybody through that. So this
Okay.
is I was having some struggles because I kept crashing on my mountain bike over and over in training. And so my coach said, "Hey man, you've got all this fitness. Why don't we put you in a road race and see what happens?" And obviously we picked a race that's in Charlottesville, Virginia. It's called the Jefferson Cup Road Race.
Oh, I've heard of that. Yeah, never done it, but I've
It,
heard of that.
it normally signifies like the beginning of the Mid-Atlantic bicycle racing calendar of these epic, fantastic road race and stage race weekends that happen through the spring and the summer. So Jeff Cup is typically like into March, early April in Charlottesville, Virginia. It's a rolling course with a couple big climbs on it. Um, and it's got a wide open sprint finish on it. And so we went through the whole pre-race, checking out the course and all this stuff. And I was really excited. And basically right before the start of the race, my coach says, "You can do whatever you want, but you cannot bunch sprint." And I was like, "Why not? That's the best part." And he said, "You're in a category 5 race. You've never raced before. If you don't listen to me on this
Oh
right now,
my gosh.
we're not working together anymore." He said, "This is the only thing that I require of you. And it's as long as you're a category 5, you are not allowed to bunch sprint." And I was like, "All right, guess I got to win earlier."
And I gotta say that in general, that's actually pretty sound advice. Like you
Looking
can
back,
avoid
I mean, what foresight this man had. He must have
well,
been to a Cat 5 race before, because
yeah.
there is no more dangerous place than a Cat 5 bunch sprint on a
I would
wide
say
open.
I would say Cat 4 is right up there too, you know?
Yeah, they're just moving faster, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, oh man. So yeah, I mean, and in typical Cat 5 fashion, this race is at like 0 dark 30, right? 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning start. And yeah, we're all lined up, raring to go. I think my mom came with me. That was like her first and only road race experience. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't remember a whole lot about the race. There was a professional triathlete in the race. I remember this part. He's a
Oh,
local professional triathlete, and this dude attacked on the first climb that's like 5 minutes, down the road, and just put his arms on his handlebars in full aero dork mode and just rode all of
yep.
us, the whole field, off his wheel. And
Classic. That's
so,
classic.
like 10 minutes later, you just forget he's out there, and so he won by like some absurd amount. And I remember that being pretty epic on his part. Because the guy, obviously in the bunch sprints posting up thinking he won, and they're like, nah, man, this dude's already changed, right? Like you this isn't even the same race, bro. Um, but I remember my coach Mark saying, whatever you do, you got to get to the front of this race, you got to attack a couple times, you got to experience it. And so in my Cat 5 brain, I thought that the best place to attack was when you were going the fastest, because it would give you the most separation, right? So I think I attacked on every downhill on the whole course. And I was like, why are they still following me, man? I just did this massive sprint down the hill. I'm flying right now, and I just can't shake these guys. This is annoying, right? Like, I don't know if these guys are just faster than the people I ride with, or like what's going on. So I was very confused about that. Um, and then on the last lap, I realized that I had to make something happen because I wasn't allowed to bunch sprint. And I was like, well, with 2K to go, I'm going to do what that triathlete did and just ride the field off my wheel, right?
Oh,
Yeah, because
how'd
everybody's got
that
to be
work? How did that work out for you?
Oh, I gave him, we must have been going into the 300 meters to go at like 35 miles an hour, man. I mean, I was still all big, strong at that point. Like, I gave the field the best lead out in the world and got the heck out of there. Um, and I just remember seeing the bunch sprint in front of me and
Uh-oh.
not ever have been, I've never been in a bunch sprint, right?
Yeah.
And I wasn't allowed to be there now. And I just remember with, 200 meters to go or whatever, thinking, holy cow, Mark is the smartest man in the world. That looks terrible, because it just it's
Did
Cat
body
5. It's people
did
sprinting
bodies
good.
fly everywhere, or did it go cleanly, or did it turn into a disaster?
From the best that I can remember, there were no casualties, which is surprising. Um, because I mean, I've done that race in the past and there's people flying off the road all over the place. But um, in this instance, in the Cat 5 race, it was clean.
Oh,
But I think, I don't even know what position I got. There must have been 20 people in this bunch sprint. And they were all fanned out across the road. And I was like, man, I don't want any part of that. But what a fun day, right? And so, you're done at 9:15 in the morning and you're just like super stoked on the experience. um and I think, I was just hooked from the get-go, because there was just so much to learn, and it was so obvious that there was so much to learn, and I think that
mhm.
really captivated me, and it gave me a platform to start digging into all these different areas, right? Like, um I did a big race recap and we talked about this for weeks, and you know this was kind of the advent of the YouTube commentator commentating over the races. And I think that in addition to having those like safe experiences of being able to sit up in that bunch sprint and not go down in my first race, but still be, able to kind of impact the race in a way, attack and be a part of it, together, really, I think made me super excited to continue to race and continue to get better.
Yeah, that's good. That is how it ended for you that first time. First impressions are everything,
Mhm.
from how the registration treated you to
Right.
how the officials interacted with you. I think oftentimes those of us who are in the race promotion business, we don't take all those things into account, as far as this could be someone's first time ever being there, or depending upon how we treat someone, it could be the last one that
Right.
they ever come to. And I think treating people well and providing a great experience. And then as fellow competitors, making everyone else feel welcome, like, man, this is fun. We're here to have fun. That's the whole point, is to have fun. And then, especially if it's Cat 5, yeah, Cat 4, some of the worst crashes I've been involved in were in the Cat 4 field, I believe, if I look back and think back in history. But that's good that you had a good first impression and that it stoked that fire and you're like, holy crap, that, yeah, there's so much you realize there's a lot I don't know.
Oh yeah. And so I just pulled up like the race results, right? And I think another thing that is so fantastic about the Mid-Atlantic series is that all of the races are accessible. And so you see very similar people at all these races, right? So in that field were former teammate Fisher Maris, who's Kelly Benefit Strategies, fantastic bicycle racer, a really good friend. You know, I didn't even know he was there, right? Like I had no idea until I just pulled this thing up a second ago. But I remember, yeah, there's another one of the triathlete guys that turned into really quality road racers named Justin Markunis. And he is a fellow, like stocky fellow, right? And so immediately we like locked eyes and we're like, yeah, I connect with that dude, right? And so he was in my first Cat 5 race, but I mean that whole year and the next year, I'd see him at all these races and we would just hang out before the race, you know, and he turned out to be a really good friend. Um, and I'm betting there's 5 or 6 other people in this Cat 5 field that I would still be super stoked to talk to and hang out with, and who are still racing at either, you know, the races that I do or very similar races now, you know? So it's super cool to look through this list, and I should have done this before we started, and just see the amount of people that are still involved that got into the sport at the same time I did, who probably had the same super cool experience at Jeff Cup that I did. So
Mm.
yeah, if we all would have stacked it in that final sprint, who knows, right? So
I mean, you received really good advice and you listened and you followed through, which is all good. And that's cool. I think it also highlights how powerful our words as coaches can be sometimes,
totally.
especially early on in someone's so-called racing career, that we should choose our words wisely and be very intentional about what we say, because we don't know sometimes when an athlete really hurt us and they're like, wait a second, I remember what my coach said, I'm going to do that or not do that. And I think that's a situation where, yeah, that's good advice, you know, and that's going to keep you out of trouble. It's going to help ensure that you're going to have a really good experience through it. And um, you know, and that just is going to set you up for future races. To, all right, you saw why, and that's the other kind of connection. You saw why he said that.
Right.
You know, it's like, oh, you got to be comfortable with being a bull in a china shop, so to speak, in those moments, because they can be really hectic, and it gets even more hectic the higher you go in the sport. But by that time, let's say you're Cat 2, Cat 1, or say a masters racer who has been involved in many pack sprints, you've grown accustomed to positioning and the speed and the cornering and that thrill. There's something about the thrill, any kind of bike race finish, man. The thrill of the finish, I think, is some of the most fun parts of bike racing. Is the actual finish, when it gets right down to it and you're either in a small breakaway or it's a pack finish. There's a thrill that comes with that, and it's fun. For me, it's fun. I enjoy that. You know, what is it about since the racing that for you, what is the fun part for you as a bike racer, and what has it keep you it keeps you coming back for more of it?
I think it is so difficult and so punishing, and the success is so rare, that you're always grasping on these little straws of success that you've had in the past, and you just want that same feeling again. And there's so many, I really like the amount of components that go into a victory when you really break it down. There's, of course, your fitness, your equipment, your tactics, luck, situational awareness. So I think just the overwhelming amount of things that go into bike racing and the things that are mainly under your control. And yeah, just how hard it is, man. Like there's nothing that I like more than like just suffering and the psychology of everybody working incredibly hard and being at their limit, and being able to, either hang on and make it or impact your will on the pack or on your breakaway mates. I think all of that is fascinating and motivating. Um, and you just want that same feeling over and over and over again. Um, I'm not someone who would rather race than train, I don't think. I really love the fitness component and the numbers and seeing progress, and then using the racing as kind of the validation, the cherry on top in a way of all this work that you put in. But I don't think I would train as much as I did if I couldn't race the races and against the caliber of people that I do.
I probably am on the other side of that myself personally. It was the one thing I struggled with when I first got into bike racing was waking up on Monday and I would be in a fog. My physical response to racing on the weekend was initially weird to me at first, as compared to say a day after a baseball game. Knowing I probably had a game the next day too, depending if I was in college. You play 4 or 5 times a week. You get to professional level, you play pretty much 7 days a week. So you wake up every day anticipating the game. And then I got to cycling. I'd wake up on Monday, and you just go through these hormonal changes and endorphins through the activity of racing that you don't get. I would say probably for your experience, even in lacrosse, there's something that just really gets released. Same thing in baseball. It's so slow moving for most of it. And then you get to cycling and it's just like, man, you just have this euphoric feeling almost through it. And then when I would have a really low on Monday and I would get frustrated because I had to wait a whole week to race again, and I have learned over the years, I thrive on racing every day. The moments when I got to race 4 or 5 days in a row, and I've done some stage races where I had those chances, or say something like the Gateway Cup, or something where there's a series, whether it's say Dairyland or something like that, where you just successive days, day in, day out. I thrive on that. And I love that more than once or twice a week, or worse, once or twice every 2 or 3 weeks. I love to race. I mean, I know you love to race too, but
Dairylands is like hype. Yeah, all of those things are super fun.
Yeah. So, but I also enjoy the training. Yeah. I mean, you have to, I think, in this sport, love practice.
Yep.
And any sport, any endeavor, you have to separate the preparation from the actual competition, but you have to approach that preparation as if you're competing, because you're truly, in the end, competing with yourself the whole time anyway.
Right.
So prepare as if you are racing or competing while you're preparing, which is going to make you that much more effective when you actually do compete. That's been my philosophy, at least.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I'm like you. My first bike race, there's a lot of details I don't remember about it. I remember it. Mine was the Highland Rim Road Race, which is in McMinnville, Tennessee. It's not on the calendar anymore, but it used to be one of the big ones in Tennessee. It was a monument in Tennessee. And McMinnville, it was a full weekend. They had a really challenging road race. Then he had an afternoon time trial and then a crit on Sunday. But the road race had this one long 3-mile climb in it. And the rest of the rest of the course is pretty boring, so to speak, but that climb just separated. And I mean, it would always be the deciding factor. It was very selective. And I just remember I finished alone. I finished dead last alone. And I got to the finish line covered in salt. There was nobody, really no one even left. I mean, most people had already finished and moved on and getting ready for the time trial. And I remember finishing and not being dejected. I like you just said, I felt like, wait a second, this was, even though I got dropped on that climb and I was not in a group and I was solo for, oh gosh, I don't know how many miles. I got to the finish line and I wasn't wanting to just throw in the towel and say, screw this. I was like, you know what? That was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I want more of that. I know I can be better than that. And yeah, it excited me to just keep going and experience more of it. And yeah, you start from square one and you're just so new. You don't know what you don't know. And that you have a response where it's a good, healthy one. Like nothing bad during that race happened to me other than just getting dropped and being by myself. But I just remember crossing that line completely wasted, but yet excited about the next opportunity to compete again. And that was in, I believe it was year 2000. That was the first race that I did, was the year 2000. And yeah, that I'll never forget that feeling. And just having that picture in my head of coming in the finish line solo, dead last. And I kept doing it. I don't know if that was just, I mean, I think I want to say it was one of the smartest things I've ever done, was the first bike race and then the second one, and then on and on and on. But here we are today. We've doubled down on this sport, but we've become coaches. We continue to compete. You're racing at the pro level. And the fun thing, I think you alluded to earlier, is with all these things that we do as coaches and as athletes, is that there is no one thing. There's so many different facets to the sport and the profession that makes it interesting. And you're learning something new every single day.
You're right.
So.
And yeah, it just never stops, right? But it does place into question, how many people had your same experience or had a worse experience than me who just hung it up, right? And how, as now coaches who are preparing people for those same experiences, how to prepare them in a way that they want to go out there and compete, but they also understand that one race doesn't define their experience within their first year of racing, right? That it's whether you finish first or you have to pull out of the bunch sprint or you finish last, that it's just one race and it's just one experience that culminates in year over year over year of bike racing and builds a total experience that is enjoyable and motivating. And, for most of us, we can justify the thousands of hours that we spend for those moments in races that do go right. So
you bring up a good point earlier about how those little slivers of success and just a little bit of a taste of success, how that motivated you and continued to inspire you to keep going. Like, you have to come to terms with, and I think you and I probably came into the sport of cycling having already dealt with failure so often with our backgrounds, that failure in cycling, no big deal. You just know, I mean, I fully expected tons of failure. Maybe I think that's something that a lot of cyclists, if they don't bring another sport to the table, and a background in another sport where they've already confronted failure or the emotions. Really, it's about the emotions. It's what you think about the failure or the frustration of how you perform. It's really about that. And that we're fortunate that we'd already come to terms with it and are okay with it. And at that, for me, is one thing that really pushes me. It's like, I'm going to overcome it, and I can thrive on that one time. It's like that pat on the back you get from the right person at the right time. You might only get that pat on the back once every 6 months or a year, but that one time is that's all you need.
Right.
It's all you need to just push and just keep working and do it, because it came from the right person, the right moment, the right situation. And I think this sport has a way to do that for people, which will parlay into other aspects of your life. I really do believe that you can, how you handle this sport or compete in it or push yourself through it. Even if you don't race, you don't have to race. You can still push yourself and compete with yourself, but it also mirrors other aspects of your life. What do you think?
No, I totally agree. Yeah. And, the parallel I think with cycling and other sports is that we bring the approach that we want to hurry up and fail so that we can learn from it. And I think that it's such a brutal sport in a way that you can sometimes lose sight of that if you don't get that little bit of success to remind you what you're actually chasing, right? Yeah, and to go back to Dairylands, I mean, I went to Dairylands and I don't even think I cracked the top 40 except for one day. And that one day made the whole trip worth it, And so, having that little sliver of success every once in a while makes it totally fulfilling and, justifies all the sacrifices that you can make. But yeah, we could go into the mental side of the sport and intrinsic, extrinsic motivators, satisfaction, all that stuff. That'd be a whole podcast topic. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think failure was just, coming from team sports. It was, you failed every day. Every single day you did something incorrect or not perfect, and you just learn from it. And so being able to translate that into a sport where you just like hit your intervals and go home is very difficult, because, that we kind of do a pass fail system, right? Our training peaks is either green, yellow, or red. It doesn't take into account all of the opportunities that you either took advantage of, you were even aware that you could do better in some of these during that day, or you just did your workout and went home. So it's tough to make people realize that your pedal stroke, your approach to the same corner you take out of your apartment building onto the main road, like all of these things are either you execute them to the level that's acceptable to you or not. And you have the ability to pay attention to those things on a daily basis and create your own system of successes, right? Like if you don't do your intervals correctly, you can still find something in that day, in that workout, that is a success that wasn't there the day before. So being able to break things down, I think is really beneficial to long-term success in the sport, where it's not just about power numbers and placing in races and all that. There's so much more to it that you need to pay attention to, and that are things that you're either improving on or excelling at, that give you these little slivers of satisfaction.
And so very true. Something I said to one of our athletes a few years ago, and I really believe this, and that is, you don't have to win to win.
Yep. That's
You
great.
really don't. You don't have to win to win. It's great when you win. It feels awesome, especially in cycling. Oh, it feels amazing. It's even better if you've got teammates. Either they won or they helped you win. But you don't have to win to win. You don't have to win to improve. And to, pay attention to those little details and say, you know what, my offense today, I was 0 for 4. I didn't score any goals. I didn't execute physically. I failed today. But there's something that you did well. Maybe you played defense pretty well. Maybe you executed in a way in some other area that you got better. That's going to help you next time to be even a better bike racer or better competitor. And you have to find out what those things are for yourself, and not, especially in cycling, not focus all of your attention on what was my average power, what was my normalized power, what was my peak sprint. Well, those are cool, but where did you finish? How do you feel about the finish? And in fact, you can feel pretty, like you just said, I felt amazing that one time I cracked top 40. Like, you didn't win, but you felt great.
Yep.
And that's what we want, is at the end of it, you feel good about what you just did. Like, wait, that's progress. That's progress. And you should celebrate whatever progress it is that you make in this sport, because it is so challenging. And the opportunities to do that are infrequent as compared to other sports that we grow up with, where we play more games and you get to taste more success more frequently, even though there's tons of failure in it.
Yep.
Cycling's just a different animal. And you have to come to terms with that early on, I think, as a bicycle racer. Or if you don't, you're going to have this love-hate relationship with it, and it won't be healthy. It just won't be healthy. So, no, I think that's all good stuff. And yeah, there's mental mindset type things we'll get into later on in some future episodes,
right.
and touch on how important that is. Again, it's just one more little area to put some attention towards, to be better at, because if one is just focused on the intervals and the workouts and the rides, well, that's part of it, but it's not the end all be all. There's so much more that goes into you as a person, to you as an athlete, and to not neglect those things.
For sure. Yep. If all your chips are in the basket of win or lose on the bike race that you do once a week or twice a month or whatever it is, it's very difficult to continue in the sport, improving, having fun. And so, yeah, I think that the big takeaway is finding success in those smaller moments within a race or within any experience you have, and being able to be satisfied and be fulfilled and justify the sacrifice and the investment that you're making.
Yeah, very
definitely.
true. Very true. Well, Zach, I think we've covered about everything we wanted to talk about today.
Yeah, and as a little anecdote, in my second race ever, I just looked this up. It's a super hard race in West Virginia called Tour Tucker County, and it's got one of those 3-mile climbs in it.
Ooh.
And Owen Brenneman was in my race.
Ah.
Yeah.
Ah.
And Owen is a freshman at Lise McRae and like 10 years younger than me. And yeah, he was in the race.
So who was ahead of who at the end of it?
Oh, I beat him. Are you kidding me? Man, it's a Cat 5 race. It was over 3 hours long.
What?
It finished on a like 3-mile, 10% grade road. There were no feed zones. There was a feed zone. I remember there's a feed zone because this kid was talking trash. And the first time we went through the feed zone, he got a bottle or whatever. And the second time we went through it, he was on the side of the road laying down.
Oh my gosh.
Because he just had enough.
Oh, look, man.
He rode backwards on the course and just laid down in the feed zone.
I've got a whole other episode I want to do on feed zones. We're going to do that. I've been meaning to record an episode of just nothing about feed zones. It's going to be stories from the feed zone. It's going to be etiquette. Oh, I got a rant about feed zone etiquette. I have my own personal crash story about the feed zone. Oh man, I'm writing that down.
I can add some. Yeah, there's quality there. Write that one down. I can't wait.
Oh, that's. Oh yeah.
I have to get Matt back for feed zone talk. I'm sure no one's got better stories than Matt Zimmer about just the chaos that happens in bike races.
Yeah. He's a professional storyteller. For sure. All right, Zach, good episode. Covered some good ground. Told some good stories. Another one in the books. All right. We'll keep at it. Thanks for listening, y'all.
Thanks. See ya.